Did he say 1 minute? That was a very important call from my nail tech, who I haven't heard from in 3 months.
Oh,
I'd call her back later.
that is an important call.
Okay. All right. It is 3 o'clock, so good afternoon, everybody. This is the June pre-planning meeting of the City of Frederick Planning Commission. And let's see, so the first thing on our agenda for Monday is a consent item. Does anybody have anything to say or ask about that? Oh, I tell you what, before I do that, I acted like we were all together again. So in the same meeting, why don't we do this? Why don't we take a roll call of the commissioners, and then we'll see we can see who's on the staff, but we'll also, in addition to Gabrielle, who else is here? So, Commissioner Burns.
Commissioner Burns is present.
Commissioner Manalis.
Commissioner Manel's present.
Commissioner Strawson.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Strawson did indicate that she would not be able to attend today.
Okay.
Thank you.
And Alderman Russell.
I'm here. Bear with me. I'm on my phone this time.
Okay. You look great. All right. And Commissioner Nicholas. And we have, from the planning staff, we have Gabrielle Collard with us.
Yes, present.
And looks like Pam Reppert is here.
Here.
And Sherry Kelly. And, oh, and Sherian. Have I missed anyone that's going to be part of the meeting?
I think you have us all.
Okay. Okay, so now we'll go into the agenda, and our first item is the consent item for the preliminary forest conservation. I'll just take a quick roll call to see if anybody has any comment on that. Commissioner Burns?
No comment, Burns here.
Commissioner Manalis?
Commissioner Manel's no comments.
Alderman Russell?
No comments. Thank you.
All right. And Gabrielle from the planning staff, anything to say on this?
I don't think we have anything to add. The application's the same as we saw at workshop.
Thank you. Our second item is a continuance for
Hello, I think Alderman Kelly has a question.
Do we swear in for these as well? Just to make sure. Okay.
Yeah, I asked that same question before the meeting, just always looking at the protocols, and thank you. So there's a continuance for PC 20-186 zoning map amendment 515 South Market Street. Let's turn this over to the planning staff member to present it as to what the issue is.
The issue was that they did not post their advertising in time, so they missed that window, so they had to be continued for the next meeting.
Okay. The next item is a miscellaneous item, PC 19-889. It is a combined preliminary plat and final site plan for Bloomfield. And this is interesting. The planning department is requesting reconsideration of the motion. So let's turn this over to the planning staff to walk us through it.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a request for reconsideration, so it's a little different type of item than we normally have on our agenda. It is being brought forward by the planning department as opposed to the applicant, but of course with the applicant's consent. Basically, after we issued our follow-up letter to the applicant, it was noted that their modification request, as well as some of the analysis in our staff report, spoke to the inclusion of the single-family cottages in the modification for parking, for their on-site parking requirement. We did not capture that in the motion or the recommendation that we made, which you all modeled your motion after. So we are asking to reconsider it, to go back and look at that specific item for the modification. So it applies to not only townhouses, but also the single family cottage type units. And that was the reduced parking for the on-site minimum standard. With the reconsiderations this month, per your rules of procedure, all you will do is decide whether you want to reconsider it or not. The Planning Commission could say, no, we don't want to reconsider, we're done. We hope that you will consider it, consider reconsidering. And then the next month we would discuss in July, we would re-present the case and bring back a new staff report with substantive information. So this is just to determine if you would like to entertain a reconsideration.
Okay, so I'll do a roll call for any comments or questions on this item. Commissioner Burns.
Nothing yet.
Commissioner Manalis.
Commissioner Manalis, no comment or questions.
Alderman Russell.
No comments or questions, thank you.
And same for Commissioner Nicholas. All right, I think we know what we need to do on that one. So next is item D, and this is PC 2078. It's a final subdivision plot for Wolcott and Van Ryzen. Turning it over to the planning staff.
So for this one, we ended up adding a couple of conditions of approval. One was with regard to the sidewalk in front of the residence on 106 West 5th. Gabrielle had spoken with Tracy Coleman, and she had sent someone out to look at it and agreed that it does need to be repaired. So we're adding that as a condition of approval. Sorry about that. And then also there were a couple of surveying comments that needed to be added as conditions. Sorry.
Okay, thank you, Sherry.
Wanted to add his 2 cents.
So we will do a roll call. And as I went through it, that did look like that was the only thing that was added since the last workshop, the business about the sidewalk. So we'll do a roll call for comments or questions. Commissioner Burns.
Commissioner Burns, thank you, Sherry, for following up on that. Actually, I looked at it. It seemed pretty compliant for ADA, but it's in really bad shape. So I think whenever we can cause any square inch of sidewalk in the historic district or anywhere to be fixed, I think that's spectacular. On the plan, they have this thing called a shed that was just built within the last many weeks. Is that kind of thing that typically is part of this kind of approval, or is that just they just get like a historic permit for that and building permit? Do sheds go through your planning office? Just curious in asking.
Yeah, they well, since they are in the historic district, it would need their approval, and then after that, they would get a building permit for it as well.
Okay, so presumably they did that. It's pretty good looking, although it doesn't look that compliant with the historical motif of the neighborhood. Okay, thanks.
Part of this application on this, Gabrielle, is to actually correct the fact that they did erect, I'm assuming it was that shed, an accessory structure, as well as the parking, which is accessory, wasn't on the principal structure. So any approvals, the HPC, they were waiting to kind of rectify this issue, and then have been in contact with the applicant, and we'll work through that process too. So the end game will be that everything complies with all of the applicable regulations.
That's the important thing, to make sure one arm is communicating with the other, and we're in good shape. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Manalis.
Commissioner Manalis, no comments, thank you.
Alderman Russell.
So Alderman Russell, just to be clear, all of the things that we are approving now were done prior to getting approval, and this is generally after the fact. Is that accurate?
Yeah, it is. They went and they did the shed, and I don't have the plan in front of me. Oh, and they paved their parking area and hadn't gotten approval, and it was caught by one of the building code inspectors. So that's why they're having to come back through to remedy everything. And then once the plat is approved, then they'll have to go back and get, they'll have to go back to the Historic Preservation Commission and get approval, and then get their building permit approvals.
Correct. All we're approving is the consolidation of the lots. So none of those structures actually require any action by this commission. All our responsibility is for the plat. So we're not condoning any of these structures. We're not granting any sort of tacit approval for any of that. All we're doing is combining the lots so as to pave the way to allow them to get approval for those things.
So without this consolidation, they would not be able to continue with the road to approvals.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Were there any code violations issued, do we know? Or was just all trying to be corrected here?
You know, I'm not sure. I'd have to go back and look and see if they actually did issue any violations. I can check that.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, this is just an example of, you know, it's distressing when people go ahead and do things in the historic district and anywhere really without regard. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay. And I want to thank Commissioner Burns. He has had the eyes on the sidewalks in this city since he's joined the commission, and this was a very good outcome. So thank you for asking that. Okay, I think that wraps that one up. Next item is the PC 19-1284. It's a final site plan for Wise Gas and Go. And as you always do, if you would point out the changes that were made since the workshop.
Absolutely. Gabrielle, once again. So in response to the workshop comments, there were a couple things. One, there was a question raised about the access onto Alt 40 and whether that was something that State Highway had approved of or wanted to see modified. The plan was routed to the State Highway Administration at the time it was initially submitted, and SHA did indicate that it was up to their standard and sufficient for the use and didn't require any further updates or changes. One of the questions also raised was the location of the bicycle parking. It was placed in close proximity and is still on the plan close to the gas station. And the question was raised as to if that could be relocated to the front of the store where it would be more likely to serve folks who are actually going to the store instead of riding their bike to the gas station component. The applicant did respond and has left the bike racks where they were originally, close to the gas station. They indicated that they had concerns about locating it in the front of the store, that there wasn't adequate room to ensure safe distance between the bike racks and people going in and out of the stores and not conflicting there. One of the other questions or comments that staff had, and we talked a good bit about at the workshop, was that new little section of sidewalk that would connect along Garrett to the front of the store. And there was a slight jog adjustment to the crosswalk to address some staff concerns that we had. And what was the other? I think that was the other. The paper copies of the plans you had last time and the digital copy they had submitted had that 70-foot wide right-of-way reservation shown, but for some reason the copy of plans that they submitted for you guys at workshop did not have that shown. It is properly shown on the plan now, along with the note that we had asked for them to provide. So I think that is all we had, and then we just had one logistical comment about having the plan signed and sealed by a landscape architect.
Okay, thank you, Gabrielle. So comments and questions, Commissioner Burns.
Yes. Thank you for following up on those matters, guys, that I brought up. One of the other things was whether or not a motorhome, well, or a single unit truck could get into the gas pumps. The issue was the row of parking adjacent to the gas pumps. And the drive aisle, which is typically wide enough, but around gas stations, usually they have drive aisles around 30, 35 feet. In any event, they have demonstrated that a motorhome a single unit 30-foot spanned vehicle can get in and out of there without knocking down a gas pump. So I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Manalis.
Commissioner Manelis, I guess my only question about this is the very last page, I guess an email addressed to all of us, basically talking about some of the concerns, and was just wondering how any of that is being addressed.
Thank you. I did forget to point that out. One of your exhibits was an email we received as public comment, so that is part of the record. The first comment they had was regarding groundwater contamination. I think we've discussed it at the commission level a couple of times about the different state and federal regulations regarding gas stations and the security that they have to have. We locally don't have any specific ordinances as part of the stormwater management process. They did have to address, I believe they call it hotspot requirements that look at certain, I guess, vulnerable land uses, if you will. The second one was about the traffic. Don't know that there's anything this plan in particular has to do to remedy that. And then just looking at the third comment about the green landscaping buffer, there are existing trees there, but they have not shown and we haven't proposed any additional landscaping for that area.
Okay. Will we at some point be providing them with their, not we, but I mean the planning department providing them with some kind of comments in terms of this, or is that, how is this handled typically?
Sure. So generally, we did respond to the applicant that we would make this part of the record and would pass it on to the commission. We don't typically provide, it'd be similar to public comment at the meeting. There are concerns for your consideration. If there were things that were specifically addressed to us, and we would respond. But if they're, in your discussion, I think, we'll make a note during our presentation that we have received it. And if there's any questions you'd like us to answer on the record, we'd be happy to do that and follow up.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Alderman Russell.
Did you hear none of that?
No.
Okay. It was kind of tongue in cheek, so never mind. No, I'm good.
Darn, we missed the joke, I guess, the tongue in cheek. Most of my comments were on things that actually showed up on the plan once we got the most recent copy of the plan, and then also the turning radius, which they addressed and Commissioner Burns brought up. So I don't have any further questions or concerns either. Anything else on this one, Gabrielle, then?
I think that was all we had. Thank you.
Okay. All righty then. Our next item is a final site plan for China Garden, PC 20201.
Let's see. So some of the things that were brought up at the workshop, I guess the biggest one was the two entrances. the applicant did make some adjustments to that to help remedy some of the concerns. They did go back and look at, I guess, the traffic flow and made an adjustment to the entrance that's, I guess it would be the eastern entrance. They reconfigured that a little bit, and also I guess, I don't know if they changed the striping on that or not, but so the traffic will, I guess, flow through the site a little bit better now. They did go back and look at the traffic light as well. They said that the applicant had gone back to the site and looked at how traffic would move in and out of the site. And I guess there's no left-hand turn lane. If you're headed west on Patrick Street, there's no left-hand turn lane there at the light, but you could, he said it's actually easier to make a left onto the site at the other entrance. Traffic wouldn't back up as much there as it would at the light since there's no green arrow there. But that the light does line up with their entrance. So if people wanted to make a left out of the site onto Patrick and make a left, the light helps facilitate that better. Also, there was a question about the floodplain and the floodplain study with the Army Corps of Engineers. That area was one of the areas that was included in that study, but there aren't any improvements or anything that's being proposed. There's no plan for that at this time. So the owners had also said that they hadn't been contacted by anybody about that study. So there's nothing planned for there at this time. Trying to think of what else we added. Oh, with regard to the traffic study, the applicant, the gentleman with the traffic group who worked on this did actually provide some numbers to demonstrate that using seats versus square footage of the restaurant, using the seats for the trip generation count actually does provide for more trip generation than looking at the square footage. So there wasn't a huge difference in the numbers, but the seats actually do generate a couple of more trips.
Okay, Sherry, thank you. Commissioner Burns, comments, questions?
Yes. What did SHA say about the keeping the two entrances?
This actually isn't under their jurisdiction. It's under city jurisdiction. So
You're right.
it doesn't fall under their purview.
Right. Okay. I guess well, if you recall testimony, I think David Ling, they are not increasing the number of seats whatsoever. So proposing 172 seats, which he also testified, I believe, that was the maximum based on the fire code. And they currently have 172 seats. Has that been confirmed on your end, that what he testified to was accurate?
I think the current square footage had 90 or 91 seats originally, was what they pre-fire. So I'm not sure.
So if you're going from 91 to 172, you're almost doubling the trips. So I don't understand why that doesn't kick in an assessment of, I guess it still doesn't kick in APFO because it's even a doubling of the trips isn't enough.
Yeah, I think it has to be more than 50 trips. Sherian can speak more to that.
Hi, this is Cherian. So the assessment was based on the entire site. So the trip generation they did for the the traffic brief considered the entire site, not just the increment. So the entire site was still generating lower than 50 peak hour trips after discounting for pass-by trips. In terms of appropriateness to use the seat, I did go back and look at the IT recommendation, and what Institute of Transportation Engineers have kind of recommended in their detail for that particular land use. They do say that the number of seats may be a more reliable independent variable on which to establish trip generation rates for facilities having significant outdoor seating. So yeah, so I think in this kind of basically suggesting that the seats offer because especially with outdoor seating, the square footage of the restaurant itself may not necessarily capture the business. So I think we're comfortable with the fact that the seats were used for trip generation. The other thing, typically in these cases, we discount for the existing square footage, and they haven't really taken that square footage into consideration when they look at the new restaurant. So typically would look at only the increment, but again, they looked at the entire site and kind of demonstrated that they will generate less than 50.
So if the entire site's less than 50, it doesn't matter if it's a doubling of trips.
Correct.
It is what it is. Okay, but for Friday night, can you confirm that 172 seats is the maximum for based on the fire code, as David Ling had testified to? It would give me a greater comfort level. I'm still not convinced that two entrances are safer than one. And I think that's the bottom line for the modification. But we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, to put any ease of into your thinking, certainly, I mean, the restaurant has been in operation with the two entrances pre-fire. And I think the rationale from the business side was that if people are waiting for that signal to turn green, the other entrance gives them an option to exit out. And we haven't really heard of any complaints from the restaurant operation. Another thing with that signal at Catoctin and West Patrick is actually a 4-phase. I mean, each movement gets its own phase. So I think from an operational standpoint, that other second entrance, the uncontrolled entrance, gets a fairly significant gap in traffic to be able to, even if they have to come and make a left out. So overall, I think from an operational standpoint, I feel fairly comfortable with the proposal. And I think what they've also done is adjust the curb a little bit to help provide somewhat definition to the entrance features. So hopefully this is an improvement over what's existing.
Well, I'm just concerned that the traffic could theoretically double. So it may not be a problem today, but I don't know. I have to go out there and look at it. So I'll stop by and see what it looks. I may be making much ado about nothing, but it's a modification request, so it does give us some more latitude using our opinions. Thank you, Sharon.
Sure.
Commissioner Manalis.
Commissioner Manalis, no question or comment.
Chairman Russell.
Yeah, Alderman Russell here. Just thinking about those two entrances, there has actually been a restaurant in that location for over 40 years, I think. There have been different restaurants, but China Garden's been there for at least 25 years, I want to say. And normally I would not care for the two separate entrances, but when you're looking at what we call the top of the hill, back in the day, they probably still do, where the old Texaco was, and if you're coming Patrick Street and you're going out towards Route 40 and you're at the top of the hill coming down, if your left lane, that doesn't have a dedicated left-hand turn signal into that restaurant, and there's a lot of incoming traffic from Patrick, that light turns green and a lot of people want to turn into that restaurant, and you're cresting the hill, that left lane is going to back up. And so it does provide a bit of a relief valve for folks that want to get into that restaurant, not to have to back up into that traffic where typically they'd be wanting to go straight through. So I've watched it for a lot of years. I will tell you also, just for your information, it's a hot spot where police officers sit backed up to that wall and catch speeders coming down the hill on Patrick Street. So it also allows them a quick get out to get you.
Anything else? So to my untrained eye, I keep looking at the two plans, and while I see some of the markings are different, I don't know what I'm really looking at and what's an improvement. So if one of the two of you, Sherry or Cherian, can actually point out the changes that they made to the entrances, what they were and why it's an improvement, that would at least help me, I can tell you. Oh, I can't hear you.
Yeah, let me see if I can pull at least a sort of a hand sketch we did. I mean, I think probably will help. I'm not saying it's my crude marking. Let me see if I can get to it. That's or if sorry, I'm just.
Well, while he's looking for it, Barbara, if you look at the plan really closely, you see dashed double lines. That's where the existing curb and gutter is, and then you see solid double lines. That's the proposed. So they're making it a lot wider. Also, I guess if you look at the plans that were submitted for workshop, you could see the difference.
Well,
Can I share? Is it okay if I share though?
Yeah.
Yeah, go for it.
I am looking at the two, and that's what I say. I don't really know what I'm looking. I can see different things, but I don't know what they mean. So
Okay.
This is sort of sketch we kind of provided to them. Hey, why don't you make some adjustment to the curb and narrow the interior lanes, the circulation lanes, and I think that's what they responded to. So the curb openings are not exactly where they are. It's moved slightly to the west. Like if you look at the resubmitted plans, that the curb, especially at the signalized entrance, is actually pretty close to where it is today. So they kind of moved it all to the right side of the building a little bit, but essentially this is what they did. They kind of tightened up one side and provided for a bigger median so they could plant the trees and things like that.
And what was the purpose? And thank you for doing this, because I could see that line on the right that looks like a big nose in blue. What was that?
Well, that was.
Sorry, the left nose.
This one?
Yeah, the big. So what is that? Is that all plantings now? That whole area?
The curb now is pulled out. Earlier, this was all paved area.
Right.
Basically extended the curb to that parking lot where that number 5 is.
Mm-hmm.
So basically provided a little more clarity in terms of how the circulation would happen on site. So basically cleaned up a little bit, and I think that gave them a little space to plant 2 trees along West Patrick Street and say, okay, we don't need the waiver or modification on the street trees.
And Jerry, and I concur. I think that's a much better plan. With the entrances are better defined. The channelization on site's better defined. A little less chaotic.
Yeah, I mean, I think we tried to do the best we could with that. So I'll stop sharing this.
And thank you. No, that really helped, because to see the blue, we could see what happened. So I appreciate that.
Thanks, Sharon.
Okay. I think we're good on that one then. Next one is same project, China Garden, combined forest stand, lineation, et cetera, et cetera.
Nothing new with that. You know, they're proposing the fee in lieu of, and we don't have any conditions of approval for that one. So it's the same as was presented at the workshop.
Okay, comments, questions, Commissioner Burns?
Commissioner Burns, no comment or question.
Commissioner Manalis?
Commissioner Manalis, no comment or question.
Alderman Russell?
Alderman Russell, no thanks.
And same with Commissioner Nicholas. All right, so that takes us to 100 North Market Street, final site plan, PC 20-207.
On that one, what I did was we pulled the architecturals, a couple of the photos from the historic preservation packet that was approved for that. So you'll see the architectural renderings for that. And let's see, just go back through my notes here. We had discussed, you know, with regard to any public amenities, and I think we had talked about that at the workshop. We didn't think anything could be done for that, but let's see. I think that was it on that one.
It's really, really helpful to see the renderings, so thank you. Commissioner Burns?
No comment or question, other than it's, I hope that when it's actually built, it doesn't overshadow the building on the south side of Church Street, which is so very important to our state's history. But you know, if the HPC is good with it and it complies with all the code, it is what it is. And more density downtown is always a good thing, in my opinion.
What building is on the south side? You mean on the other side of the street?
Yeah, it's where I get my hair cut.
Oh, okay.
No, it's where the you should read the plaque on Church Street about you get a little history lesson about how the northern delegates got all the southern delegates. I'm sorry, the north-leaning delegates got the southern-leaning delegates locked up before the vote to secede or not, when the legislature was not in Annapolis but was here. So it's a pretty interesting history there, and it's very nice, very attractive building being reused now with the apartments. So it's all good. I know I butchered the history, but something to that effect.
No, but thank you. I'll be sure to take a look at that plaque. Commissioner Manalis?
Commissioner Manalis, no question or comment.
Alderman Russell?
It is Kemp Hall. You can Google it and get that information, but it's, yeah, why we never seceded. I don't have any questions about this. Ron, you did a fine job with the history.
And I don't have any questions either, Commissioner Nicholas. So that takes us to the last item on our agenda, and it's Wren Mixed Use Preliminary Forest Conservation Plan, Final Conservation Forest Conservation Plan, PC 20-209.
Yes, this one, we have a modification for removal of a specimen tree. They have added this tree on their list to be removed because of stormwater design, and also the path that right now is shown on your plan that the tree is actually on the path. But they have given justification of inserting their grading for their stormwater. So you'll be looking at that. And then on the plan, we're just looking at some more distance for one of the comments from the stream bank for 50 feet that we need for restoration. Just a correction on your protection signage. I wanted to verify that the trees along the cemetery, if they could be used and saved there instead of replanting. And we wanted to include in the legend the proposed trail. The last two comments here, Cheerians work with us with making sure that they're aware that we need to have some finalization of their connection to the path that's going to go through J&K and also the 5K loop, and how it is actually running along Highland Street and making sure that Highland Street is safe for 5K runners, of course. The reason why we've come to this, these two comments is because usually this plan will run concurrently with a park site plan. And because they're moving forward with their forest plan first, as stated in the staff report, they may find when they get to the park site plan that they will have to come back and change some of the easements. They may change in size but they will be providing all their forest conservation as noted here for the 30.09 acres on site. So if you have any other questions.
Commissioner Burns.
I'm good, thank you.
Commissioner Manalis.
Commissioner Manalis, no question or comment. Thank you.
Alderman Russell.
Did everybody else hear that thunder and see that lightning?
Yeah.
No questions.
And Commissioner Nicholas, also no questions. So I'm gonna do a quick run through once more to see if anybody has any final comments or questions in general before our hearing on Monday. And then after that, the meeting will be adjourned. Commissioner Burns.
And we're meeting Tuesday night too, right?
Tuesday night is the comprehensive plan. Yeah.
Okay. Not you, Gabrielle.
No.
No question, comment. Thank you.
Commissioner Manalis.
Commissioner Manalis, no question or comment. Thank you.
Alderman Russell.
Happy Friday. Enjoy your weekend. Stay dry and safe and well.
Thank you.
Wow. No questions.
Did you see that flash?
Meeting adjourned.
Take care.
Okay.
Thank you. Be safe.
Yeah.
The protesters were already there.
Well,